Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. So excited.
Well, I'm excited to have you on. I think we're going to have a really nice dialogue here, some good convo and some good things. So, before we do get into all that, can you mind just sharing with the listeners a little bit of your background, your story of how you got into what you're doing today?
Oh, I'd love to. Hello, everyone. My name is Andy Chan. Hello from Hong Kong. I'm a strength and conditioning coach, educator, coach, now author, based in Hong Kong. And these days, if anyone goes on the internet and if you just search for anything in relation to health and fitness, you're gonna find such overwhelming amount of information out there that a lot of my clients certainly will have trouble digesting. So I always tell people my job is to help people deconstruct and demystify all the fitness information out there so that no one has to waste time doing things that perhaps actually harm their athletic performance and harm their health. Nowadays what I do, I do personal training, I do group coaching, I do webinars, I do talks now, and all that just to share kind of my insights so that no one has to waste time doing things that don't actually hurt them, but actually implement practices that helps their health and human performance. Oh, your audio cut off for some.
Oh, sorry. Is it something that you wanted to, where like something inspired you to want to get into, like drove you to the level, to that perspective of going into the field that you're in?
Yeah, so I actually I have a master's in exercise science, right? But my undergraduate degree was actually in accounting, and then anyone can tell you it's a big switch from boring accounting job. No offense to any accountants out there, but it's a big change from accounting to exercise science, and that's actually because of an experience that I had in 2014. So when I graduated with my accounting degree from Indiana University in the States, I came back to Hong Kong, and I was given a chance to go for a trial with a local professional soccer team. And growing up, I love playing soccer, and being a professional athlete would be, any kid's dream. And so I decided to pursue that path, and I went on a trial with this professional soccer team. And then, I can still recall it was one day in practice where we were doing some agility drills. And for those of us who don't know what agility drills are, essentially you would set up cones or different obstacles on the field, and this is where you kind of work on you do some flashy moves that you sometimes see on social media, on YouTube, but this is to work on our coordination, to work on our agility, to work on our balance and speed, etc. So while I was doing this, the fitness coach, he pulled me aside and he was like, Andy, when other people do it, they kind of just switch directions and they turn, agilely. But when you do it, you have your arms stuck out to the side and you do like 180-degree rotation before you switch directions. In other words, why are you so stiff, man? And and essentially I had a bit of an epiphany because I realized what I was doing inside the gym did not translate to better performance outside the gym. And so, it piqued my curiosity to look into this fitness training more so that I can help those who are on this journey to become a better athlete so that they don't train the wrong way. That would actually make them stiff. And so that's when I got into personal training. I did some courses with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. And then fast forward, I realized if I want to take my career to the next level, not only do I have to be a good presenter, but I actually have to have knowledge. And obviously in the fitness industry, a lot of times people just bluff around. And all you have to do, essentially, allow me to be honest and upfront here, is most people are just good looking and they have amazing looking body, and somehow that makes them the expert. But 5 years ago, I already knew that this is not sustainable. And if I do want to stand out from the crowd, I need to go back to school so that I can be academically qualified, so that I can learn to read different researches. And that's what I did. So I went back to school, got my master's in exercise science, and that's what I do now. So I'm a coach with a master's in exercise science. Being in the profession, that is my passion.
I love that. What are some common imbalances you see with your clients and so forth, or the big misconceptions that people let's just go with the common things that people have, or that need to create, that prevents them from having a dynamic balance?
Sure. Well, first of all, dynamic balance is a great term that you brought up. And well, I would say the biggest misconception is, I'll go back to my story of my soccer story. And I remember in high school when I came back from the States. So I went to high school in the States, middle school, high school, and then college in the States. And when I was back for the summer, it was junior or senior year, I was looking to join the gym so that I can put on some pounds and be a better athlete, as lifting is quite a common thing to do, obviously in high school. And when I came back, I still remember I was at the gym, at a commercial gym, and the sales lady obviously sold me some personal training sessions. And of course, I took those sessions. And I was with the coach, and I was telling him my aspirations to become a better soccer player. And he was like, well, all you have to do is to do some leg raises. And because that mimics the kicking motion, and you're going to work on your quads and you're going to work on your abs. And from this point onward, you're going to kick the ball further. And as a teenager, gullible teenager, I believed him. And then so we did a lot of isolated muscle training stuff. And I would say that's actually the biggest misconception that I see nowadays. As an athlete, my emphasis is to get them to move better. Because if we can move better, we're going to perform better. Yet I think a lot of people are stuck in this isolated muscle training mindset. Not that it is bad, but it's just not what the whole thing should be. It's not comprehensive enough. And so I would say that one mistake that prevents them from achieving dynamic balance, in my understanding, is that they focus too much on the isolated muscle, but not working enough coordination and how everything should move in sequence. Because the best athletes, if you look at LeBron James, if you look at Tiger Woods, when they move with power and grace and elegance. And that's what we're after.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's vitally important. I know in my journey, in weightlifting and being an athlete and so forth, it was all about lifting the weights. How can I be stronger as a baseball player? What are the things I can do? And then, I started to notice I had more tightness. I had more of the issues showing up. And then eventually I said, okay, this isn't going to work for long term. I need to change this up. And that's where I started looking at more full body motion movements and making sure I can move with flexibility and things like that. Which was ended up being a more of a game changer for me, because all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have that tightness anymore. And all of a sudden it's like my body, my power is getting stronger. It doesn't make sense. I was stronger before, but it was being able to use different aspects of what of my body and so forth to be more at ease and flow. Like you said, I love how you said the word grace, because literally when you watch like Tiger Woods or some of these masters, you're just like, they do that like nothing. Like it's just nothing for them. Like Michael Jordan doing a nasty fadeaway. You're like, but he did it. He didn't even struggle. Like you just look at him and you could see the replay, and he's like, yeah, look, he just does it. Like there's nothing, and it's that type of aspect to get there.
No, I agree with you. I mean, sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, because, well, since you brought baseball up, actually 90% of my personal training clients here in Hong Kong are golfers. So, and obviously a big misconception there is they just do random type of rotation. But, as a golfer, even baseball player, right, we know the idea of the weight transfer and the idea of us better rotation, and it will just make you a better athlete. Yet people are just always stuck in that isolated muscle training because they're so consumed by the thought of using their core. So they end up just doing all these stuff that just doesn't help. So you're absolutely right. There's just so much more to just isolated, force it out muscle training.
Now, is it hard to achieve that level of grace? Is it something that takes endless amount of hours and works and months and years to get there? Like, how's that journey process look like?
Yeah, well, I think so I've written a book called Dynamic Balance, and in the first draft, when I submitted to a publisher, I used a phrase, the blind leading the blind in the gym, because a lot of us who are fitness enthusiasts, what we do inside the gym are usually what the people did, well, what the other people did inside the gym. So we just followed what other people did inside the gym, and most of us did not really have kind of a system. And so I would say that wow, totally forgot the question. Sorry, I forgot what was the question again?
It's basically looking at how can that grace and that ease? Is it something is, is it extremely hard? Does it take months and years to get to? How's that look?
Yes. Now I remember where I'm going with this. So a lot of us have no direction whatsoever. And a lot of us don't even know what we're training for. So essentially, we're just out there doing bicep curls because other people are doing bicep curls. So I would say for my clients, we make it clear on the first session that, hey, look, all the best athletes out there, golfers, Tiger Woods, you look at tennis players, Serena Williams, they're moving with elegance and grace. So why don't we keep that in mind when we're doing different movements? You should always look for the flow, and you should always look for good coordination and sequencing. So start with understanding why we're doing it and what we're trying to achieve here.
Love that. Now, you may have answered this question already, but I kind of went a little ahead, and I'm coming back and wanted to ask you this. What does dynamic balance mean?
Yeah, dynamic balance. So in our co-author book, we looked at health and fitness from three perspectives, essentially a lifestyle, right? So we looked at your diet, we looked at the way you manage your emotions, and the way you train. Because traditionally in the fitness world, we usually looked at different aspects in isolation. While this idea is not bad, because us being, or me being in the US for 10 years, we know that there are specialists in different areas. And while that specialist might be an expert in that subject matter, a lot of times we get so consumed in one area that we forget to look at the whole macro, the whole body as an ecosystem. And so in dynamic balance, what we're encouraging people to do is, okay, why don't we, instead of just focusing on training, why don't we look at the way you're eating? Why don't we look at the way you're managing emotions? But here is where I want to make clear, we're not giving out diet plans because, we believe principles go a long way. Because, I'm from Hong Kong, figure in the US, and our diet is influenced by our culture and our geographical location. So if we're going to just stick with different principles, we know that people will achieve dynamic balance, which is the point where they perform best. And that's where the optimum health and human performance point is.
I can agree with you on there. I mean, sometimes people, there's so many diets out there, and, everyone's following what diet's better for this or that or this, or what's the best to do. And sometimes I know from my background in nutrition for 21 years and then being a chiropractor and understanding even more of the depths of the body from a physiological and biochemistry standpoint, it's like there's certain foundational principles that if you just follow them and just do, and there's other things we can do now to actually make our job easier. You don't have to go to the extremes of doing some of these stuff that's out there. Not saying that they don't work. I don't even know if you're a fan of any of them, but it's one of those things where, and that's the thing I'll ask you, are you a fan of diets? Or is it, how do you approach these things?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can tell you sometimes these days I'll do different workshops with listed companies and big corporations, and obviously they require me to write a proposal or at least an outline of the workshop. And usually I'll tell them that if you think about human body, like if we just do the subtle yet simple stuff, it goes a long way. And some of things does not have to be flashy. And believe it or not, corporations don't like that because they think, I'm paying you money. You better say something dramatic, or you better say something extreme so that we can catch people's attention. But no, if we just kind of stick to the way we're supposed to eat, which is eat natural food that are available to you, not overly processed. If you just manage the way you breathe, we've been breathing for thousands of years in different ancient practices. And yet, the way that we're going through a lifestyle with the stress and all the distraction is just, causing our breathing to be shallow and erratic. So, through managing our breathing, we can manage our emotions. And training, as I said, many of us are stuck in that bodybuilding type workout from the 80s and 90s. But that's not how we've been working out for thousands of years. And so why don't we take a step back and just look at all these different things to kind of figure out what's the natural thing to do? Because ultimately, the natural thing is more often than not the best thing for our body, because that's what we're created to do.
Totally.
So sorry for all that to say, I'm not a fan of different fat diets.
I love it. No worries. I appreciate the backstory on that all though. And so then how do you bring traditional Chinese medicine into things? Like how do you utilize it? And maybe really quick before you even get into that, just share with the listeners, what is traditional Chinese medicine?
Yep. Chinese medicine, it's an ancient type of medicine that focuses on health. And I would say the simple way to explain it is, in the West, in physiology, we learn of the concept of homeostasis. So the self-regulating process that the body goes through to survive, right? So if you look at homeostasis, if you look at physiology, we have different terms or we have a language that is telling us about why we're able to maintain homeostasis. We've got pH, we've got blood sugar level, we've got temperature, all of that. But if you think about in Chinese medicine, 4,000 years ago, these people would not have access to all these fancy lab equipment. So essentially, they're just using a different set of language, like qi, blood, yin yang, 5 elements. Yet, if I think about my US experience, and if you think of kind of the US health and fitness industry, I would say most people are misinformed about what these terms mean. And as soon as that happens, I think a bunch of people just kind of put it off because, oh, I don't understand it. It must be weird. But Chinese medicine, at first, when it started, it's meant to be a medical system. And I understand that somehow, in recent years became more spiritual and it could become a bit weird at times. But in the way that I see it and the way that we go about it in Diet Balance, we're focusing on the medical aspect. And that is, okay, how can we go at it from a preventative medicine point of view? How do we go at it so that we can maintain homeostasis while using natural remedies so that we can go at life in a positive way?
I mean, it's all about the chi at the end of the day, isn't it?
It is chi, and I'll tell you, even that, the word chi, it causes a lot of confusion because people are like, so what is chi? And in the balance, what we try to do is we bring it to the cultural aspect, because for me, you cannot understand a set of language without understanding the cultural aspect of that language. So chi, in every single term in Chinese medicine, there are two meanings to it. One, the functional meaning, and second, the philosophical meaning. So this can be applied to chi, blood, yin, yang, 5 elements, you name it. Qi functionally just means energy to the body, right? You need energy to sustain, and it has functional properties. And two, the philosophical meaning. The reason why Qi is philosophical, because you cannot see it. It is talking about this force that sustains the universe. And there's Qi in literally everything, right? The body, even some rocks that you see, jewelry. And that's why it's also philosophical. And then I think usually it's the second point that people get put off, because you mean philosophical, but every single term in Chinese medicine has that connotation to it.
And I appreciate you bringing that up, because there's sometimes people will hear it that way and they're like, oh, that stuff's that woo stuff again you're talking about. So what are some other things that you see from the West versus the East where you see like misinterpretations? Because I know I've studied some Oriental medicine, and I've got into traditional Chinese medicine, early on in my late teens, early 20s, just started studying it, just wanted to learn what was that about. Because when I started hearing about chi and the meridian systems and all this other stuff, I was just like, this is really interesting. This is something I never heard before. And I'm like, 5,000 years, how the hell they know to do these kind of forth? You know what I mean? It's like, how did they map out the body back then? And it just, fascinated me. What are some other things that you see that create misinterpretations, or actually, or is not being done to a certain way? Because I love how you brought up the cultural influence without, not looking at something without the cultural influence into it and so forth.
Yeah, and here's where I kind of I like to go at it from my master's background, because obviously in the fitness industry now, everyone's using the term evidence-based practice, right? It seems to be the buzzword these days. Oh, I'm what I'm doing is based on science, and so the first question that people usually ask is, show me the research. And while this idea is noble, I mean, I think it's great that we're looking at the research, but the people that are emphasizing it, quite often they don't understand research, and so I don't think the question is valid until everyone they have a better understanding of statistics. So usually one of the first arguments against Chinese medicine is it is not backed by science. But one thought that I would have to combat that is it is time tested, right? And if you look at the things that they talked about thousands of years ago, they're slowly being validated. So I would say that this idea that Chinese medicine is pseudoscience, I think we people are just misinformed. So I would say first and foremost, that's that. And second, usually people will point to acupuncture as well, because there's a lot of talks about how acupuncture might be just after a placebo effect. But on that, I also think that this is an unfair claim, because if you look into the studies that claims acupuncture is just all down to placebo effect, well, if you think about it, so for those of us who don't know, acupuncture involves sticking needles on different parts of the body, known as your acupressure points on the meridians. And how do you placebo that, right? So usually in research, they might do a toothpick, or they might just do something. But we now know that there are so many receptors in the skin, even us just brushing, so I also do some education content on behalf of Rock Tape. And we know that there are receptors on the skin that even you brushing the skin it's going to send messages to the brain to help you cool down or to help you calm down. So all that to say, whenever we're applying any type of force or any type of pressure to the skin, we're stimulating a response. So in this way, there isn't a true placebo effect. And so I would say that's why research in this area is still developing. And all that to say, for people who say that Chinese medicine is just pseudoscience, I think they should look into the philosophy more and understand that sometimes you can't apply the framework of Western science to, another culture and another system.
No, I totally agree with you there. I mean, I'm being a chiropractor. I know how that goes. It's one of those things where the true essence of what we do as chiropractors, most people don't even know. A lot of times you hear the word chiropractor, you think of someone who helps with the back, the neck, or headaches of some sort. But in the end of it, we were really just brain doctors working on changing your brain to the higher level functions and so forth to help that self-regulating, self-healing mechanisms in the body. We do have also in our profession evidence-based chiropractors or evidence-based, and I look and I'm always like, that makes no sense, like because you
Exactly.
can't. I know Chinese medicine is very similar in this ways because, well, it might be a little different though, because like, for example, if I make an adjustment at someone's, let's say the first bone in their neck, C1, and that's not going to guarantee the know that one adjustment helps with headaches. Yes, there's neurology that can show and I can prove it, but that can also help with someone's bowel movement. That can also help a kid with colic. That can also help somebody with sleep issues or XYZ. So when you look at it from an evidence-based standpoint, then that becomes invalid because you can't. Evidence-based means you do this to get this. It's very like it's taking the medical system of training and you're taking all how they do things and you're trying to put it into holistic care or I don't even call it alternative care because that's when it shouldn't be termed that. But along those terms, you can't. They're two different mechanisms.
Yeah, and that's why I'm actually a big fan of your work, Dr. I mean, I listen to so many podcast episodes, and the fact that you have so much exposure to different philosophies in order to help your clients, I think that only you would understand because in the States, we're so consumed with this binary mindset. It's either this or this, right? I just follow this protocol. No, let's just stick to the protocol because that's how we should do things. And yet, you don't know the condition of the person who's coming in. They might be super stressed, they might have some trauma, and all that to say, you sometimes you cannot just go by your regular playbook because everybody is unique in their own ways.
That's so true. I mean, the more as the better, the older, the further I got into my career, the more I started to see the individualism when it comes to work. Yeah, there's themes and there's there's commonalities, but there's really, especially when you start to get into other things like looking at emotions and, because I used a lot of different modalities to help people with building resilience to their body, being able to handle the stresses that they deal with on a daily basis, plus other things. And it's fascinating how you can just be like, well, Wim Hof breathing, breath work. It's phenomenal. Everybody's doing it. Let's do it. Here, do it. I tell everyone. But because I keep hearing, I would have clients come up to me or patients come up to me and be like, hey, doc, have you heard of this Wim Hof breathing? I'm like, that email I sent you that I told you about, that emotional stuff you're going through? And I said, this will work for you because it's really designed to help. It can really work on that energetic level for you and all that. It's just like, maybe. And I'm like, it's okay if you don't. I'm not going to yell at you. This is not like, I'm not that guy. And then they'd be like, well, yeah, I think so. And I'm like, I sent you his information so you can practice that. Oh my God, I did it one time and it was absolutely amazing. I'm like, yes, I know. It's pretty cool stuff. But then some other times I tell people like hey, Wim Hof may not be for you. I can tell it. Let's look at a soma breath, or let's look at conscious breath, or let's look at, different things that work for different people. And I think that's kind of where we're kind of moving and when it comes to certain things, even though I want to do this or I want to do that. But I think there's going to come a time, and maybe I'll see it in my lifetime, where people will be tired of the fads. They'll just be like, I'm tired of what the cool thing is now. I want to I just want to know what works and just do this instead. Who knows? We'll see if that happens.
Well, I mean, hopefully you're very optimistic, but on this, I'm quite pessimistic about it because first of all, we know that people's attention span has gone worse and worse and worse, shorter. And as a result, with the Amazon and stuff, we want stuff now. And which means when it comes to healthcare, I want to be cured tomorrow. When it comes to fat loss, I just want to be skinny tomorrow. So, I think a lot of the fitness or health and fitness practices, they're just selling hope essentially, right? You're going to do this and just lose weight in a week magically, get a six pack with 12 beers every day. And so, I just don't think that this will go away just because people are just getting intolerant and impatient. And to understand, health and fitness, we so this is an important point I usually tell my clients. So let's say they're coming in and they're obese and overweight and stressed, and with, I don't know, maybe some hunchback posture. And I tell them, well, you are the way you are now because of your lifestyle from the past 10, 20 years. And the fact that you think you can reverse everything in the week, just from doing some juice diet. I mean, no offense to juice diet, but just from, it doesn't have to be juice diet. It could be anything. But the fact
I'm losing a lot of listeners here, but go ahead. Keep going. You're bashing them all. Sorry. Just messing.
Exactly. So the fact that you could just lose everything in a week, I think, it just doesn't work like that.
Agree. I mean, that's not how I would always educate my patients about that. Wherever you are, it doesn't matter what you have going on. It didn't happen. It didn't just come on yesterday. This is years of stuff that had to lead you to where you are today. And it's not going to take a day or two to go away. It's going to take time, even though you may feel better pretty quick. The pain, once that goes away, that's only 10% of the problem being solved. And then we have 90% of the work still to go. And so I think that's where, I can see where your point is too. It's one I'm optimistic in all areas. Like an asteroid could be coming and about to hit us, and I'll say, all right, I see what's coming.
We'll destroy it.
There's a chance it may something. There's that small fraction. I'll just be like, I'm going to hold on to that. But I totally get what you're saying though, and it's one of those things where we do want things now. We do want things in the moment. We all this convenience life that we're having. And I always say convenience comes with a fee. And when you look at it in health, yeah, you can get shredded and you get in the quickest shape of your life. That's great. But there comes a fee to that because like I used to do programs when I was I remember I had patients started asking me about weight loss. And I was like, well, if I do a program and it's around weight loss, the whole focus is not weight loss. And they're like, huh? And I was like, I'm going to teach you hormone balance. And I go, I'm going to educate you on how to get your hormones in balance. And I go, can you lose weight in a certain period of time with that? Maybe. I've had some people that'll take 6 months. I have some people take a year. I've had some people that lost it in 1 to 2 months. So I'm like, but it's going to depend on where you are. But I go, the purpose is not for the weight loss. It's just to get you to balance your hormones. Now we balance those hormones. Then all of a sudden, weight loss is inevitable. It's going to come because the hormones are what's controlling everything. And I said, so we'll do that. But it was interesting. Some people are like, I've been doing this. I've been practicing what you're telling me for 6 months and I'm not losing anything. And I'm like, you got to give it time. If you've been metabolic, and even research shows now that like some people, there's a point of no return with your metabolic health. I mean, it takes a long time to get to that point, but you can't get there where it's going to be hard to turn it back. You've done too much damage. But it's just one of those concepts of, we'll see. Like I said, it may happen in our lifetime, but I don't know.
Yeah, certainly. I think people are a lot more open to different types of philosophies out there. People are at least more open-minded and they're willing to explore, which is always a good sign because I think now with all the practices, obviously I wrote a book on Chinese medicine and fitness, but if you look at other ancient systems like yoga, like all the stuff around the world, we'll know that actually the ancient guys, even though they didn't have the fancy equipments that we do now, they did have some profound truths to what they do when it comes to breath work, when it comes to different natural remedies, when it comes to a lifestyle. And, they were never fat. And part of it is because they didn't have that much food back then, but also, they weren't treated to as much sugar and as much processed foods we have nowadays and the lack of sleep problem that we all have.
Yeah, and they're outside, they walked around. I mean, you look at other cultures, like I'm Italian, so now Italian culture is more Americanized, but before, the typical Italian, you see them and you're like, wow, they're thin, they're slender. I mean, look at people in Paris, thin, slender. Italians eat. I mean, it's still to this day, they do the 3 C's, which is carbs, coffee, and cigarettes. They still smoke. Everyone's like, they still smoke. And I'm like, yeah, don't ask me. I have a lot of family members that do. But it's one of those things but when you look at them, they got beautiful skin. Their hair is shiny. I mean, they look out and you're like, what the heck? But again, it's a lifestyle, right? It's getting outside. They move, they're walking, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 miles. They move all day long. Where in America or we're more sedentary. we're not doing that as much. And that becomes, an effect on our health massively overall.
Well, I haven't been to Italy, but I've heard the pizza in Italy is a lot better than your average pizza from America. Things are more fresh. You've got fresh material. You don't have as much sauce on it. The crust is just a bit more fresh. And it makes a difference. In America, we run pizza. I mean, no offense. Okay, I might lost more listeners, but
man, you're killing me. I'm gonna have
exactly.
to rethink this.
Exactly. But the pizza in America, it's terrible for you. So I think you're absolutely right. It's a lifestyle thing, and it all comes together. Oh, but I was going to say that it's sometimes it is kind of funny in a way, because in America, obviously, it's everything is the most advanced, right? When it comes to scientific studies, when it comes to thought leaders, obviously America has produced some life-changing stuff, and even with the pharmaceuticals, all the Western medicine has changed lives for sure. Yet, if you think about the diet, the idea that the American diet is kind of the gold standard always just baffles me, because I think all of us agree that they're better diets everywhere else in the world, taste wise and just diversity wise, and yet a lot of times we kind of just stick to the American diet, right? Just a big chunk of meat and then just a little bit of potatoes and then broccoli and all of that. While the rest of the world, they're actually cooking their food in a delicious yet healthy way. So I think that if all of us are eating, I encourage you to look into different diets, kind of to cook your foods better, so that you can consume good food, good taste with good nutrients.
Totally, I'm with you on that, because I think I always say treat it like a portfolio. The more diverse, the better, because that way you're getting all these different elements, and your body will thank you more for it. Andy, how can people find you, connect with you, get your book, and all that good stuff?
Yep. So Dynamic Balance is available in all major bookstores. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Hudson. It's even in Target now. I think when I last checked. So Target.com, you can also find it there. And you can connect with me through Instagram. My Instagram account is Tsz Chiu Andy. So TszChiu Andy. Side topic, Tsz Chiu is my full Chinese name, so it's 2 characters, and a lot of times people think that Qi is just my first name, but it's the 2 together. So Tsz Chiu Andy, and my website is tzchiu.com if they want to look more into what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate you being on and appreciate you doing the work that you're doing. Definitely needed. We got to get out of this old archaic way of thinking. And I've been seeing a little bit of a change in that, and you're being part of that, and I greatly appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.